Hi, welcome to the Microsoft Partner Showcase. I'm Brian Hitney, a cloud solution architect at Microsoft focused on data and analytics. We are thrilled to welcome Adastra to today's Partner Showcase. Adastra focuses on data, analytics, and AI solution development, and they are the first services partner on the showcase. The team at Adastra is going to walk us through their portfolio and then demo two unique AI-based solutions. The first one, their intelligent bot platform, is an OpenAI ChatGPT-based solution, and the second, called Lucid Data Hub, rapidly accelerates data engineering. Lucid Data Hub will analyze source data and then build out the data pipelines and analytical models into a lakehouse medallion architecture that is ready for reporting in Power BI. You can use the chapters below to jump to different segments. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Microsoft Partners Showcase. Today, we're joined by Adastra. We've got a number of people on their team to talk about some of the work they've been doing with Azure and OpenAI. We are recently after our Microsoft Build conference, where there was no shortage of new AI-related features. And so AI Copilot, all of this is new and exciting for a lot of developers looking to have their solutions augmented with AI capabilities. So we're excited today to be talking with Kevin, John, Venu from Adastra to show us some of the things that they've been working on. So everybody, hi, welcome to the showcase.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
So why don't we start, Kevin, if you could explain a little bit about the type of a little bit about the background to Adastra, and then the types of solutions and the industries that you work in. Give us a little bit of context.
Sure. Yeah, so great to be here. To introduce myself, Kevin Harmer, I'm the Chief Cloud Officer at Adastra. I lead our cloud solutions, cloud capability for our 800 cloud practitioners. And we have John Yanni, who's joined me, our Chief Analytics Officer, who leads our data science and OpenAI practice, and then Venu, who is a product lead for one of the innovative offers that we're going to showcase today. Adastra is a 25-year-old organization. We specialize in delivering value from data and using innovative AI ML techniques to achieve that value. We have a global presence with offices across North America, US, Canada, Europe, and Asia as well. And as I mentioned, 500 professionals in the Azure and Power Platform and OpenAI space. We are recognized by Microsoft as a top analytics, AI, and data platform modernizer. We have industry awards in financial services, manufacturing, commercial, do a ton of work in those industries, as well as retail, insurance, and other key areas. We cover the complete journey of Microsoft Cloud modernization. So everything from the Azure core capability to establish these environments to run these innovative OpenAI services, and the positioning and preparing of data to support OpenAI value through analytics and lakehouse architectures, and then the realization of value through OpenAI solutions from an AI ML perspective, and then creating great ways to interface with OpenAI through Power Platform interfaces, also integrating through Teams and SharePoint and other channels as well. We're also doing some really neat integrations with OpenAI and Microsoft Fabric that we'll talk about today. And then, obviously you need to be able to trust your data and successfully integrate your data from a data governance and iPaaS perspective. So we do cover that complete journey. So just to give you a little bit of background on who we are as Adastra and the types of capabilities we bring to our customers. Okay, so let's dive into some of the experience that we have, successes that we're bringing to market through our innovation through OpenAI. So, OpenAI has been transformative for organizations. It helps reduce FTEs, achieve value from data faster, improve experiences for users. So a few quick examples. where we have implemented in production OpenAI solutions that are delivering value for customers today. CSA Group, they're a standards organization. So if I'm an electrical engineer and I have to learn the federal standards for my electrical project, I go to CSA Group to get the information about those standards. Historically, it required a team of 15 staff to be able to service individuals as they come in. With recent cost-cutting measures, that team was reduced to 5 staff, and they continue to have cost pressures. And so what we were able to do is we were able to create an OpenAI search bot that through Azure OpenAI contextualized all of their standards data, brought it together side by side with a ChatGPT natural language model. And so now users have a bot that provides a great user experience that they interact with to locate their standards. And those standards are accessible through a self-service model, so less FTE time required to find the right standard and serve it back to the user. So that's sort of an external perspective. All CSA customers initiate their search for standards through this OpenAI driven bot, and 50%, over 50% of the time, the bot successfully serves the ask. The rest of the time, it still does require some manual support for the customer, but CSA was able to repurpose 2 full-time FTEs to other tasks by reducing the amount of manual intervention needed for customers, while at the same time improving the customer experience. In addition, they're using this search bot to be able to generate new content, new standards within their organization and accelerate. So one really interesting example. A second interesting example on the retail side, Mark Anthony Brands, our OpenAI solution. Azure OpenAI is driving and content generation for sales and marketing collateral. So as product information changes, as context related to the customer changes in CRM, new content that is targeted for the customer, aligned to the latest products, is automatically generated by Azure OpenAI. And so less manual effort needed to create those targeted communications and motions with each customer. And so again, an opportunity where they were able to repurpose 3 full-time marketing FTEs to other higher value tasks, while they allow OpenAI to focus on this automated content generation. So just a couple of ways, we have others, but just to give you a sense of how we're delivering real value in the market through Azure OpenAI.
Oh, great. That's interesting.
Yeah. So the solutions that we just talked about, these are offers that we have. So an intelligent search platform, intelligent bot platform, intelligent content generation platform. So these are repeatable solutions that we can deploy and achieve some of the outcomes that I just described. And then in the second half of the presentation, I'll focus on another innovative product, Lucid Data Hub, which, as I mentioned, you can think of a lakehouse co-pilot that works with Fabric and the Synapse and the Databricks ecosystems. Yeah.
So you guys really work across many industries then, right? So obviously you had I saw GSK on the previous slide. So obviously in healthcare, and you mentioned financial services, energy, manufacturing. So really a broad range of industries that you work in.
Exactly, because these OpenAI values are not industry specific, right? The idea of generative analytics can apply to any industry. The idea of an intelligent search bot to locate unstructured data can apply to any industry. Yeah. So these are not industry specific solutions. You got it. Okay. So the first step in any journey to achieve some of the OpenAI outcomes that we're going to be demonstrating is to establish what we call a private OpenAI and ChatGPT instance. Many organizations we work with have blocked use of the public ChatGPT because they're concerned about accidental exposure of private corporate IP through the use of the public ChatGPT service, but they still want to make the innovation driven by ChatGPT available for internal use cases. And so what we do as Adastra is, with a 2-week effort, we come in and establish a private Azure OpenAI instance. And for those organizations that have that IP risk concern, they can firewall off the public ChatGPT use and leverage the private Azure OpenAI deployment. And this can be set up and integrated with Teams and integrated with Power Platform and SharePoint, et cetera, quite easily with a small effort. And we can do this even though it has this 2-week engagement has a value of $15K. We can do it at low cost, no cost to the customer. So this is something that we do frequently to launch OpenAI as a platform to get value from within the organization. The other big motivation to implement Azure, privatized Azure OpenAI, is so now you can contextualize it. You can bring your unstructured, semi-structured, structured data into the ChatGPT natural language model. And so now you can have a conversation that surfaces your information. And so this was a this step was a prerequisite for some of the outcomes that I just described at CSA Group and Mark Anthony Brands, as an example. Yeah. And so then we're going to do a demo in a second through John of our intelligent search bot platform, very basically similar to that CSA Group example that I described previously. You can see on the right side that within your tenant, we have a private Azure OpenAI, a copy of the ChatGPT natural language model deployed within your environment. We then create a contextualized database that works with a ChatGPT conversational but contextualized bot to realize value from your data and make that data accessible for many different benefits. So this is something that we can also come in and, with a short effort, a 2-week pilot implementation, we can establish the foundation for this intelligent search bot and help you realize value for your internally or with customers from any of your organizational data. So what I'll do is I'll hand it over to John, who will now do a demo of Adastra's intelligent search bot platform powered by Azure OpenAI. Over to you, John.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone. So let me just quickly show a few things. So I'll start off just showcasing what Kevin had mentioned in terms of the technical architecture. So this is a rendition of the CSA bot. We use some generative samples that essentially are representative of safety clauses, but they're not the actual safety clauses, just for privacy reasons. But we generated a series of representative examples, and what we did was we pre-processed them and produced embeddings for each of the clauses. Those embeddings are stored in a local embedding database within the container that we'll talk about in a moment. And what that means is that it's able to be used for reference to pull in contextually relevant information based on queries. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So in terms of the container, so we have two pieces to this solution. So one is the intelligent search piece, the other is the bot interface. The intelligent search piece essentially provides a container and API for people to connect to, and it requires a couple things. So one is obviously a query, so anything you ask it. It also looks for potential history, so you can pass it additional relevant contextual messages that you've communicated in the past. Again, this is by design because it configures and connects to the front end, the chatbot. And then what it does is it will pull in contextually relevant information from the embedding database that's stored within that container, and pulls in a few contextually relevant samples, and then uses the OpenAI, Azure OpenAI API in order to summarize and concisely prepare a response to that query. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means and what it looks like, and then I also wanted to highlight that we are also adding an additional component to this solution, which is the Azure search capability. So that provides a different form of context, a way to search for contextually relevant examples, but we can do that through Azure search, and we can make that API connectivity through the container. So the container would be, kind of the engine to seed responses, and we can pull in information, contextually relevant information from Azure search, and add to that again the historical messages that were sent to the OpenAI interface, and then use all that information to provide a response. So I'll showcase again what that looks like. It'll become a lot more clear once we see an example. But just wanted to quickly highlight. So essentially, what we have here is we have this API container. So it's a small application that's deployed more or less as a SaaS solution. That API is then surfaced to our bot interface, and I'll go ahead and I'll launch right into the bot interface. So I'll show here first in the web chat, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Teams integration as well, because as a chat bot that's deployed within the Azure environment, we have a very straightforward way to integrate that into Teams, and it just makes a more seamless experience for individuals within your organizations. So here's an example again of the CSA standards chatbot. So the main goal of this was to basically look for relevant safety information in historical standards. So just backing up a moment, so CSA has essentially 400 to 500 documents. These documents can be up to 700 pages in length, and they're broken down sort of paragraph by paragraph into these safety clauses, which fall into different subsections of sections of chapters, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as well. But essentially what CSA wanted to do was be able to provide a search index across that historical information, because as they generate new standards, they're looking for relevant clauses for that standard, rather than having to create and ensure overlap with previous standards. Being able to look for historical clause information from those standards and pull that in obviously just makes the experience a lot more efficient and seamless. The other benefit is that we're able to reference those historical standards to suggest templates for new standards, which in itself is a big exercise. So there's a little bit of extra creative sort of use cases that were enabled through this activity. So if I start over the chat here, we can see, again, it just prompts, simple chatbot prompt here, asking about, what information we would like it to provide. So here we're talking about the CSA information. If I ask it a simple question, what can, or what products, can you tell me about, let's say. What's happening now is it's taking that prompt, feeding it into the container that I mentioned. It's pulling in some contextually relevant information, because I prompted before, it's saying I can't provide specific information on products as my current knowledge is limited to the context provided, but that's fine. So what we can ask it is, what is the relevant context? What information exists, within the context, within your context, let's say. Right, and it'll showcase some examples of contextually relevant information, again, drawing from some of those representative examples. Yes,
Got it. So for most of us, for those of us that are in the US that aren't that familiar with CSA, as I understand it, is a standard. It's kind of like what we would think of as like ANSI, right, or standards for
exactly ISO,
devices, appliances, that kind of thing, that throughout Canada, correct? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So they have like electrical fuse boxes. They even have things for bridges. They like any basically regulated product device construction. There's a CSA approved sort of label that can be put on those products. And those labels, again, you just have to follow a specific set of guidelines. So I'll launch into like a few examples. So within the given context, I could provide two different topics: solid biofuels, label requirements, underground, secondary, and service cables. But like, let's say, what about something in regards to fans? Let's say fans and ventilators. This again, because it pulls from a subset of the contextually relevant information, it'll draw down, it'll look for very close documents in relation to fans and ventilators, we'll see, it prompt a few different examples. Within this context, fans and ventilators associated with thermal safety and overheating protection. Overheating protection devices are used in fans and ventilators, so they operate reliably and safely. And then again, I can ask, what about, say, fire and safety requirements, right? And again, because I'm just asking it a generic question about fire and safety, it doesn't know that I'm asking about a specific area. What it does is it will reference backwards. So it does see that, I am talking about fans and ventilators. So when I ask for fire and safety requirements, we'll see that the contextually relevant examples will come from fire and safety requirements for fans and ventilators. Again, this is a fairly small sample size right now because it is a narrow sort of subset of standards, but you can imagine how powerful this would be when you open this up to a much larger set of documents. So, as an organization for CSA, what we were able to do is provide this, but at scale across all their documents. Again, this is just the narrow a subset of those documents generated, again, for anonymization sake. So, again, we can typically include overheating protection, thermal safety, mechanical safety, and again, there's clauses associated with each of these. And I can even ask, can you, reference a particular clause for or in association, with these requirements, and we'll see what it comes up with. And again, because I left this, just general by design, because it's complex, it's interesting, because we're asking about a particular cause in association with these requirements. We're not specifying what requirements, we're not even specifying what product type. Again, what it's doing is it's looking backwards. It's saying that we're talking about fire and safety, we're talking about fans and ventilators. So it understands the whole conversation, and it is able to provide relevant information. We see fire and safety in regards to fans and ventilators. We see the specific clause that we're looking for, and we can even ask it a very general question, anything else? And it'll say, probably given the narrow, amount of context we have, it'll probably say there's nothing else in regards to fire and safety. But I'll just quickly let it respond. And then I'll showcase just one last example before I launch into one of the integration pieces. And this will be, again, a quick wrap up. So I'll let that generate.
I was going to say, while we're waiting for that to respond, I had a question about, obviously this kind of an industry-specific bot is a really interesting pattern. What I would be curious to know is, you mentioned that these documents are 700 pages with multiple clauses. There's probably a fair bit of pre-processing logic that you had to do on those documents. So, do you have any thoughts about, like, let's say somebody said, this is a really cool example, but I want to do, like, I don't know, pharmaceuticals, research. What kind of effort would be involved in order to, take the corpus of that, documents associated with that, and then figure out the pre-processing logic to kind of implement this as a new scenario? Is that one of the services you offer?
Yeah, for sure. So,
Right,
definitely agree. Like, I'm obfuscating a lot of the complexity with the pre-processing.
The devil is always in the details.
Yeah, exactly, and especially with PDFs, because they were all PDF based. Anybody who has worked with PDF knows that they're interesting, to say the least.
Well, and then you've got things like. Well, then you got things like tables, and how do you get context in tables and images, and is there relevant data in the images, and so forth. Yeah. A lot of that, I'm guessing, is powered by the cognitive search side of things, as far as the structure of the documents and so forth.
Exactly. Yeah, we can use form recognizer. We can use Azure search capabilities. In a lot of cases, because of like the tables and extracting relevant content and linking content in tables, we did have to create some customized approaches to handle certain data. But yeah, I mean, you can get quite a distance with the Azure search capabilities and the cognitive services capabilities. And then anything that requires customization, we have that expertise to support as well. So I think. Classic technical demo. It's taking a little bit of time to respond, but yeah, as we see here, it doesn't have any additional information related to these topics, and that's fine. So the last thing I would ask it is just, I'm producing a new standard. Can you provide a breakdown of the sections I should include in this standard? And this one will take a little bit of time, because it is going to grab a lot of information. It's going to also produce a lot of information. We'll see a breakdown with multiple sections, suggestions on what those sections look like. We can even prompt it again because we didn't change the temperature setting so that it doesn't give the exact same answer every time. But in a lot of ways, this is good for this type of creative work because they were looking for different types of options for the standard. So we can wait for that to generate. Just in the interest of time, I'll just quickly showcase that, because of the ability to integrate this directly into Teams, we have this channel option here. We can integrate this into something that people are familiar with within the organization, like a Teams channel. So you can have that same, conversation that you were having in the web interface, but just directly within Teams, and it gives, same look and feel as any other type of conversation. So that's beneficial. Again, it just provides some information here about other things that we can potentially prompt about, and it does mention that this is specifically in Canada, but obviously we can generate this, generalize this to any particular context for an organization. So just going back to this piece, so we do see here again that it does provide a breakdown of one of the potential outlines of what a standard would look like, including all the sort of relevant sections that we would typically include in a standard. So I think just again, in the interest of time, I do want to give Venu some opportunity to showcase one of our other innovative solutions, which is the Lucid Data Hub.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so hopefully that shows the ability to create an improved user experience, improved accessibility to work with your organizational data and really unlock a lot of the hidden data, like unstructured data that you have, and make it accessible internally and to customers, and even be used, and even not just access it and search it, but also generate new content from it. So yeah, really differentiating, and certainly some of the response speeds that we saw, they're just impacted by the amount of compute provision. So we just kept the compute small because it's a demo environment, but there more horsepower could be applied to create very fast responses from those queries. Okay. So let's move on to the second topic that we want to discuss, another innovative offer beyond the two that we've talked about, the privatized Azure OpenAI and the intelligent search bot. And so we're going to talk about a product that we as Adastra have developed over the last 8 months that works with OpenAI to perform what we call generative analytics. And so this product is called Lucid Data Hub. So the purpose of Lucid Data Hub is to solve an effort to value challenge related to analytics. We find that organizations really struggle to model data and create KPIs off of the data that are meaningful to them to help them understand what's going on with their organization. How well are they aligning to their corporate strategy and achieving their goals? Often a subset of the potential value from data is realized because of the significant effort needed to model, to integrate, and to generate KPIs from data. And so we are solving that problem with Lucid Data Hub. We are using OpenAI to do a generative analytics model, generative pipelines, and generative KPIs so that you can achieve the analytic outcomes much faster and with lower costs and less effort, and therefore realize more value from your available data. The way we do that is step one is the customer simply registers their sources. They identify the industry and the subject areas and the data sources. Then our Lucid Data Platform works side by side with OpenAI to create a generative data model aligned to the multiple data sources that are registered, create data mappings to integrate data from those multiple sources into the generative data model, pipelines to load the data into that generative model, and then queries to create KPI outputs to serve those key KPIs to the organization. And this is fully automated by the Lucid Data Hub platform, which is communicating with Azure OpenAI to get some data source context, some industry context, some industry KPI context, and then translating that into the generative model, generative mapping, generative pipelines, generative KPIs. As a result, you get to your KPI insights much faster as an organization. And then from an industry coverage perspective, this can be applied into any industry context. We're going to talk about a couple of examples in a minute, a U.S. insurance industry customer, and then working with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency on public opioid databases to realize quick insights related to that. But it can be applied into any industry context that OpenAI has an understanding of, which, as you know, is many different industries. We've successfully tested this against 25 industries so far, and the list is growing. So the main benefit of this platform is to automate the source data analysis, automate the data profiling, and then based off that, automate and create a generative data model. Automate generative data mappings, automate generative data loads, automate generative analytic models, and automate generative analytic calculations, which is usually where most of the effort in achieving analytics occurs historically. And so you can think of this as we point the platform at your raw data, your bronze zone, and then it generates your silver zone lakehouse model, and then it generates your gold zone analysis results. And so you can think of this as a lakehouse copilot. Once our platform has created this generative analytics, you can then point Power BI in Fabric to the lakehouse, and then use the new Power BI Copilot to quickly create visualizations off of this generated result. So this is a perfect complement to the Power BI Copilot by bringing alongside it a lakehouse Copilot. So this is how it works architecturally within Fabric. So as we know, Fabric is able to work with any data store, Azure storage, or even other hyperscale cloud storage. Within Fabric, we use the data engineering capabilities within Fabric to create our one lake, and typically this is a medallion-based architecture for that lakehouse, which has that silver zone enterprise model, gold zone analytics model. And then our Lucid Data Hub is API-based. So there's an API where the context is sent in. There's an API where the generative data models are passed out, the generative data mappings are passed out, the generative pipelines are mapped, and the generative KPIs. So we have some customers that are just using Lucid for the generative data mapping feature, right? So you can use these APIs for this end-to-end journey or for part of the journey. You know, really depends on your use case, your need. But for that entire journey, which is where the real value of Lucid is demonstrated, we use a Fabric pipeline to communicate with the APIs and implement that silver zone, gold zone, run the pipelines, populate the data, visualize the results. So a couple of quick examples. So here's the insurance example I briefly mentioned. What we did is we took agent, broker, and claims data from an insurance customer. And so on the left, we went into Lucid and we just registered the industry as insurance, registered the 2 subject areas for our data, provided a description, and registered the data sources, which in this case had 2 databases, 11 tables, 75 columns. What our Lucid platform did is it scanned all of that data and created the generative data model, which covered organization, broker, agent, policy, cover, claims, and adjusters. So claims would be like your fact table, or the other tables would be like your dimension tables. And so it automatically generated that model and implemented that model. It then populated all of the relevant attributes that it detected from the source into those entities. and then implemented that schema and then implemented the pipelines to take the source data into that schema. Then from that, it came up with a set of 44 measures that were relevant to the insurance industry: adjuster productivity, customer lifetime value, policy lapse rate, total claims, right? This is all generative KPIs out of the Lucid platform working with OpenAI. So the net result was, with 1 day's effort, we were able to point the data at this source and create these Power BI dashboards. So that's transformative. This kind of outcome would normally take many months of efforts at organization. We were able to do it with 1 day's effort with Lucid Data Platform. And so you can see the Power BI dashboard results that we were able to generate around adjuster productivity, adjuster claim closure rate, etc., or agents and brokers breakdowns by geography, and the list goes on. A second quick example, just to show you the multi-industry capability of the platform. So here we registered a pharmaceutical industry. This is based off a DEA database of opioid pill distribution tracking, which is obviously a hot topic. And then we pointed the Lucid platform at that source data. It, again, through the generative analytics, came up with the reporter entity, buyer entity, transaction entity, drug entity, quantity entity. The transaction entity would be where the actual sale transaction was being tracked. The reporter would be the seller. The buyer would be the pharmaceutical company that provided it. The drug would be like the product. And so the generative analytics automatically figured that out. And then from a measures perspective, it came up with a number of, again, through generative analytics, 1 day effort, number of opioid pills just distributed by reporter, and so on. And so now we were able to get insights and trend by reporter, by drug, by buyer, how, like, any of the interesting trends and risk concerns related that are hidden in the source data that are kind of easily unleashed and accessed off of this opioid data. And so before we go to the quick demo, you can see here the generative model. There's the very flat source data, the generative model that I just described, and the KPIs that were delivered through the solution. Okay. So I know, Venu, it's tough to do the full end-to-end demo in 10 minutes, but I'll hand it over to you, Venu, for that demo. Any questions, first of all, Chris, Brian, you can think of from this?
Yeah, I was curious where your repository of, let's say, target schemas comes from. I know that Synapse has the concept of lake databases that's got a lot of pre-baked industry-specific schemas in it. Is that what you're targeting, or do you have some other IP that you're leveraging there?
It's our own IP, and it's generative modeling. Okay. So we actually, so for example, 2 different insurers could end up with 2 different generative models if they have different data sources. If they had identical data sources, they would end up with the same generative model. Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you were targeting like kind of an industry sanctioned schema, but it sounds like it's specific to the use case.
You got it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's specific to the source. Like, it's completely specific to the source. Like, the target is not rigid in our model, so the target is completely generated based on the source schemas and source data.
Now, what I will add, though, is one of our customers actually had, an insurance customer already had a target enterprise model based off the Synapse template, and so the one feature in Lucid that they wanted to leverage was the data mapping feature, that particular API. So we do have the ability to accelerate mappings into existing models if that's the use case, or for a customer who doesn't have the model, they can do its own generative model, which is where you see the best acceleration.
So this is how it integrates. So this is the DEA scenario, actually. So I'll go to the insurance demo and directly into the actual product. And so this is the screen where we have the customers can go in and sign up for the APIs. So this is actually a seamless integration with any ETL platform, including the Microsoft Fabric, Synapse Data Engineering. And also this is what we are offering. This would be a managed self-hosted service which will be deployed on a customer tenant into their internal networks in Azure. And so as part of the offering, we also have a Lucid GPT kind of chatbot where we can actually the customers can interact with the generative analytics what the platform has produced. So that we are leveraging the same APIs in the background. So this chatbot is connected to those APIs. So the natural language on the data. Uh, uh, the questions are converted into more specific entities and the measures. So, for example, get me the top 10 pending claims. So the chatbot will actually go and identify like what metric the user is actually referring to based on the question, the text, and then it brings calls the respective API in the background and pulls the data for that. And so these kind of the interactive, the chart with your own data kind of thing. And I'll actually go into the product. So this is the insurance example we have. So this is a bronze layer which actually has two different data sources. One is a broker management and the CMS is a claims management system. So currently this data currently resides into the Azure Data Lake environment. So we have created shortcuts to the Azure Data Lake environment. So in the One Lake environment, and these data currently like all this data, and we have created a set of Synapse, a simple pipelines in Synapse, which actually connects to the our Lucid Data Hub APIs in the background. And like Kevin just mentioned, like it defines the context around the data, like it registers those data sources in the bronze zone, and also it defines the context about the data while it is registering the data. For example, while it's registering the claims data, so all we are doing is that we're making a simple call to our Lucid API with the simple context data, like this data related to the claims management, including the incident reporting. So this is exactly the customer have to provide just at the system level, the data system level, and then we're defining what industry type it is, and then it goes and registers this information into these models. And and then finally it goes, there's a set of APIs to scan those tables, and it goes and finally it does the mapping. So there is a separate APIs to do the silver zone mapping, which produces that entity and relational model, the integrated relational model. So for the output of this execution, actually I'll show you in a bit, but I'll quickly show you like how the APIs will respond for each of these, for example. So, for example, this is my source table claims. It is actually mapped to the claim entity, and there is a source table called claim item. It is also mapped to the claim entity here. So this is how it identified that these three tables are actually connected together in my source based on the data scan we have done and based on the analysis we done. And then we created one common entity called claim. And then finally, it goes and produces those entities in my silver data One Lake environment, which is also a lake house basically. So it produces a folder for every entity it produces. So for example, we have a claim entity, which is actually a combination of the data between all those data coming from different systems, different tables. And finally, it ran through the measure goal zone processing, and then it produces the APIs layer in my gold lake house. Final. So this is actually the final business insights which are pre-calculated by the product, by the tool, based on the data available in the silver zone. So it actually goes and identifies that relationships, and then it predicts that what kind of KPIs you can produce based on those attributes and entities, and then it actually goes and generates the queries to produce those KPIs, and it executes the queries and finally loads the data in the target goal zone lakehouses. So this is what, so everything is an end-to-end. For a customer experience point of view, it is a without writing a single line of code, with a simple orchestration by a simple calls to our APIs through the Synapse pipelines. The customer is able to produce the silver zone and the gold zone. And finally, once we have this gold zone data, we have created a simple Power BI report, which actually connects to my gold zone, basically. So with the data which is coming in this Power BI report is coming from the gold zone KPIs and measures. So there is no data set modeling has happened in the Power BI, and there is no calculations or measures are written. There's a simple showing the output from the gold zone into a powerful visualization in Power BI. And
thanks, Manu. I think the other really important point is if the API creates, say, this generative KPI query, and the customer says, you know what, I actually have a data quality issue, and I want to hard code an additional filter to remove some anomalies. The customer does have the ability to customize the generative results. So it is possible to maybe use this as an accelerator for your foundation and then tweak it to deal with some of the unique things that come up over time. But as you can imagine, it still really launches analytics faster for the organization.
Yeah, exactly. So we are building the SaaS tools where the customers can actually interact with the output of every step in this process, and they can actually adjust the output. For example, if they identify that the particular table is not mapped properly to an entity by the Lucid Data Hub, they can actually change that mapping to a different entity, or they can go into a query which is produced by the platform, and if they wants to alter that query by either they can introduce additional columns or additional filters, or maybe add an additional join to the table, then they can do it directly from a user interface and then rerun the process from there onwards. So automatically the next steps and the next output will be adjusted accordingly. So, and I also wanted to show one simple the chatbot the customers will also have access to. So this chatbot will work with the data what the Lucid has produced in the silver zone, and as well as the gold zone, and as also silver zone. For example, if I just type, get me the top 10 claims, top 10 pending claims. So
yeah, and just for clarity, this could also be done through the Power BI Copilot when it goes GA in the future. So this is available now, or the Power BI Copilot within Fabric could be used as well.
Yeah, so the Power BI, like for example, if they have this the report, right? So once the data is connected in the report, then they can do the same thing through a Power BI Copilot as well. But if the data is not, so the Lucid GPT, what we are doing is actually interacts with the data available as well as
in the
lakehouse actually.
Directly in the lakehouse.
So,
yeah,
lakehouse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so we're really proud of this. Like, we feel this is unique and innovative, and so a way to, we've seen so many customers struggle with getting full value from their available data. And look, if this platform accelerates 90% of your data mappings, and then you do 10% customization and delivers 50% of the KPIs you need out of the box, and you add the other 50%, it's still a huge accelerator. So we see huge value for customers through this. Yeah. And Fabric is the perfect platform for this to work side by side with. Yeah. So, and this is hot off the presses, right? We just introduced this product a few weeks ago, and I have 3 customers that are adopting it right now, and certainly see the potential for many organizations to leverage and benefit.
A lot of organizations collect a lot of data that they haven't touched yet, right? Because it's on the to-do list of things to work on. Is that how you see this going to be most implemented?
Exactly. So we find, let's say an organization has invested in building out their enterprise data lake. Maybe they have 90 to 100% of their data there, but they may only have 30% of it modeled for analysis, right? And so this would be a way to accelerate the other 70% that hasn't been modeled for analysis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that's a lot, right? Because I think the step one is collect the data, and then step two, which a lot of people don't get to, right, is the processing and the modeling of that data. And so oftentimes, you start with the transactional systems that have that data. That's usually kind of the low hanging fruit, but it's all of the other data that you have that you haven't yet fully realized, right, in terms of doing all of the modeling and analytics that you can get on top of that data. So anyway, this is great.
Yeah, and also one other point about this platform is that when it's trying to model that the entities and the silver zones, right? So your data doesn't need to be there in one system, in one source system. Like even the platform goes across the systems and then finds the correlations and finds the relationships and builds the target model, which is an integrated based out of multiple source systems. Like even you have the data coming out from your external systems or any other system, so it finds out the correlations.
Yeah,
right.
So I know we're at time, so just wanted to level set that. We are ready to help organizations leverage Azure OpenAI to get value from data, whether it's empowering better user experience and access and contextualized chat with the search bot platform, or whether it's leveraging generative analytics to realize insights from your enterprise data. A couple of ways that we're delivering value through OpenAI, and we continue to innovate and have more and more offers planned that we will be bringing to market. So really excited to share that story with you today, and look forward to engaging and working with our customer organizations. Yeah.
Great. No, thanks, team. This is really interesting stuff. I would love to dive into it more myself and try it out on some data. This is really interesting, and I know that this is the kind of thing Chris and I spend a lot of our days working on with partners and customers, right, with their data. So very cool stuff. Happy to see it. Chris, I don't know if you have any other closing thoughts, or we can end our showcase.
No, I just really interesting stuff. I mean, as you guys hit on the fact, finding your source data, figuring out your target data model, and preparing all the data movement and data flows from the source to the target is typically a very monumental effort in an analytics solution. So being able to make that more turnkey is pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for joining today, and really appreciate it, Kevin, John Venning for the demos, and really look forward to seeing what else you come up with over time. And we hope this content was useful for you, the viewer watching. If there's anything else you'd like to see, make sure you let us know, and reach out to the Adastra folks if you need more information. So in the meantime, thanks for joining this Partner Showcase. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode. In the description below, we'll include links to Adastra's website and also their Azure Marketplace offers. We'll see you next time on the Microsoft Partner Showcase.